I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.
Hello there, Price of Reason here with a movie review. Over the past 10 years or so, directing, producing, and writing duo Phil Lord and Christopher Miller have cemented their place in Hollywood as the trendy it guys when it comes to animated movies such as Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and the Lego Movie. More recently, though, through their production company, they've also been involved in producing more live-action movies, especially ones that involve animated animals in real-world settings. After producing this year's Cocaine Bear, Lord and Miller now present Strays, a new movie about dogs in the real world, starring Will Ferrell and Jamie Foxx, and directed by Josh Greenbaum. The story is about a dog called Reggie, voiced by Will Ferrell, who becomes a stray after being abandoned by his abusive owner. Now living on the street, Reggie makes friends with Bug, a more street-smart dog voiced by Jamie Foxx, and two other dogs who all decide to team up and teach Reggie's abusive former owner a lesson. As they're on their journey to find Reggie's former owner, they run into obstacles, overcome different challenges together, get to know each other, and ultimately bond as friends. When I had initially seen the trailers for this movie, I have to say this movie looked pretty dumb to me, but having top-tier talent like Will Ferrell and Jamie Foxx involved gave me hope that they would both be able to elevate the material somehow and make the movie good. Ultimately, though, this movie does end up being somewhat of a mixed bag, with certain ideas that work and some that fall flat. If I had to say something I liked about this movie, it's that I think that both Will Ferrell and Jamie Foxx do a great job with the voice acting. Their voice performances are, in my opinion, undeniably the strongest aspect of the movie, as they both bring a lot of character and charm to their roles. Will Ferrell is absolutely perfect as this kind of naive and gullible dog who doesn't even realize that his owner is such a jerk. Jamie Foxx gives an equally great performance as a more practical and blunt stray dog, and the interaction between them at times feels both natural and genuinely amusing. The problem for me, though, is that the screenplay isn't as strong as their performances. This is really a shame because I think there was a pretty cool premise here that just isn't executed as well as it should have been. The idea of a dog running away from an abusive owner is grounds for an interesting story, and the movie starts off strong by exploring this idea. I also think that Reggie joining a group of strays is a good story direction, but this is where the movie starts running into problems. Rather than finding a balance between humor and heart, the movie leans very hard into the humor aspect and somehow loses a lot of its heart along the way. Another problem is that the humor, in my opinion, tries too hard to be shocking at times. I realize that this movie is rated R and therefore it's able to include an unlimited amount of crude and raunchy jokes as it pleases, but the fact that this movie can do that for its entire runtime doesn't mean that it has to. Now don't get me wrong, some of the jokes were funny and I'm not offended by gross out humor. It's just when there are so many number 2 jokes and jokes about private parts, it at some point starts hurting and cheapening the storytelling, and in my opinion, if these crude jokes were used but just a bit more sparingly, I think that the movie would have only benefited from it. Not to mention that some of the best jokes and best parts of the movie already appear in the trailer, and a lot of the ones that we're seeing for the first time are not exactly the best. As it is, this movie always feels like it's going for the absolute lowest common denominator of humor, and it just ends up hurting the movie itself. Another issue I had was with the animation of the dogs. I mean, it looks okay for brief stints, but after continuously watching it for a while, it obviously has a very uncanny valley feel to it, especially when the dogs are talking. In contrast to the Lord and Miller produced Cocaine Bear, where the bear only appears occasionally, this movie features the dogs all the time, so it's really hard not to notice it. Also, Cocaine Bear never speaks, so the uncanny valley in that movie never feels as harsh. I will say, though, that both movies do have one thing in common. Both present a compelling creative idea that never quite reaches its full potential. If I had to say why that is, I think it's because Lord and Miller are somewhat overrated, especially as producers in movies where they aren't writing or directing. Now, I'm not saying they're bums or anything, they do have some talent, but I always feel like when they're solely acting as producers, the final output usually falls short. With Cocaine Bear, there's a fun idea for a horror movie, and the bear actually looks pretty good, but the scenes that don't include the bear aren't very well written, especially the dialogue. With Strays, there's another fun idea, and some good scenes and a lot of potential, but somehow the movie is weighed down by very mediocre writing and storytelling. I guess what I'm saying is that if Lord and Miller would hire a decent writer to join their team and monitor the quality control of the scripts they produce, this would only benefit them, because this doesn't seem to be their strong suit. On the bright side, I have to at least point out that Strays doesn't feel agenda-driven. I mean, I suppose that one could claim that the abusive owner is from a certain background, and if that decision was intentional, it's certainly not obvious. For the most part, I would say this movie is pretty much escapist. It seems like it isn't looking to lecture viewers but just to entertain them, and while it may only succeed in doing so some of the time, it doesn't seem mean-spirited with its intentions. Also, if nothing else, it's an original property, so they didn't take something that was already beloved and ruin it. They just didn't do as good a job as they could have with something that they created, which is disappointing, but at least it's not infuriating. But considering the type of talent attached to this project and what could have been, I consider this movie a real missed opportunity. If, let's say, a score of 59 out of 100 would be considered a failing grade, I would give this movie 60 out of 100 just to pass it, and that's pretty much just because of Will Ferrell and Jamie Foxx's performances, and also because I like dogs. But if we're being honest, this isn't necessarily a movie that you need to rush to the theater and watch. It's more suitable as something to put on in the background on your home TV set if you have some friends over and you've all had a few beers. It's okay, but just barely that, and you really have to be in a specific mood and mindset to enjoy it. What did you think of Strays? Did you love it? Feel free to let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and also clicking on that wonderful notification bell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.